Right now is a complete mess. The last 2 men elected president were Donald Trump and Joe Biden. A pandemic has plagued the world for the past year, killing over 2 million people, yet so many still refuse to wear masks. Perhaps America isn't intelligent enough to make the right decisions. So the question arises, should national security be up to the people? Should the common man be trusted with his own freedom? Anytime this thought crosses my mind, though, I remember a certain Marvel film. And given that Falcon and the Winter Soldier premieres in a few days, I think now is the perfect time to talk about Captain America, the Winter Soldier. In this video, I would like to discuss a few different aspects of the film and hopefully give you a greater appreciation for it. So let's get started, shall we? Spoilers for the entire MCU from here on out, by the way. So, Steve Rogers is a man out of his time. He is an Avenger. He is Captain America. But ultimately, he is a soldier. One who has returned from war to a world far beyond his understanding. After waking up, he could have done anything he wanted, but he chose to return to the front lines, this time as a SHIELD agent. Not to mention as an Avenger. Fighting is all he knows, it's what he's made for. And this, compounded by the fact that Peggy Carter helped found SHIELD, is what keeps him there. However, modern military practices are far different from those from his day. Steve is used to knowing why he's fighting. He's used to being trusted with all the pertinent information. He believes that soldiers need to be trusted because, in his words,
soldiers trust each other. That's what makes it an army, not a bunch of guys running around shooting guns.
Nick Fury obviously thinks differently. He compartmentalizes the hostage rescue, sending Black Widow in with a completely different objective than Captain America's without bothering to tell him. So, after reaching this disagreement with Nick Fury, where does Steve go? He goes to the Smithsonian to remind himself of the good old days, where doing the right thing was what mattered, when he trusted everyone he fought alongside with his life. He then visits Peggy, the only one of those trustworthy soldiers still alive, at least as far as he knows. And then he goes to the Veterans Help Center and sits in on the end of a meeting. His conversation with Sam afterwards makes it clear that he is considering letting go of being a soldier, but even that idea is fleeting, because being a soldier, again, is all he knows. He has no passion. There's nothing else in his life that fulfills him, that makes him happy. He low-key asks out his neighbor, perhaps as a way of broadening his horizons, but unfortunately he's pulled back into the fight right after. And ultimately, she was a part of that fight. He's not returning to this fight though because he wants to, but rather because he has to. Nick Fury made it clear all the way back during their discussion in his office that Steve could not trust any of his fellow agents. So he is thrust into a confrontation with his own agency, one that he already distrusts. Even Black Widow took half the movie to gain his trust, but we'll talk about that later. The only person he knows from the start he can trust is Sam Wilson. Sam Wilson, unlike SHIELD, cares about people. In fact, his second scene in the movie is him heading a meeting for veterans suffering from PTSD. Like Captain America, he too was a soldier who lost his best friend in combat, but unlike Steve, he got out. He embodies, in a sense, the life that Steve wants. One where he can make his own decisions and not be the military's pawn. A life where, rather than valuing information over people, he actually makes a difference in people's lives. And like Steve, when duty calls, he's willing to enter the fray and get his hands dirty. These two characters embody the idea that what defines a soldier is not his willingness to follow orders, but rather his willingness to follow his moral compass. They do not fight to secure information or to further their agendas, but rather they fight in defense of freedom, in defense of the people. And Captain America's speech near the end of this film proves this. He calls on his fellow agents to stand up to Hydra, to have the courage to say no. He reminds them that the cost of freedom is high, but he states that he is willing to pay that toll.
And if I'm the only one, then so be it. But I'm willing to bet I'm not.
And the movie makes sure to show the people's response to Cap's message. Many agents, from the armed Sharon Carter to the pilots to even the defenseless computer guy, all stand up and say no. And their actions are not rewarded either. Many of them, the pilots especially, meet very gruesome ends for this choice. Even the guy who simply said, "Close the door," got gunned down. This may make you question the purpose behind it all. Why tell them to close the door if they just shoot you down and keep it open? Well, that's the point of being a soldier. The idea that freedom is more important than one's life. The idea of respecting those who fell before you for the sake of freedom by falling in battle yourself. The most interesting thing, though, is how many of these agents Captain America supposedly couldn't trust were actually aligned with his values. But what is one to do when one of these good soldiers is forced into fighting for the other side? What do you do when the best soldier you know is on the wrong side? Is such a soldier the kind you save, or the kind you stop? This question is posed to Captain America in this film, and interestingly enough, he and Sam come to two different conclusions. Sam approaches Steve before the final battle and says that Bucky needs to be stopped. And honestly, if I was in Captain America's shoes, I would agree. And that is what emotionally pulls me into this movie. The fact that despite all rational thinking, despite having no idea if the old Bucky's even there, or if he is, to what degree, the idea that Captain America is making a different choice than I would is what makes this story so compelling. But why does Captain America refuse to give up on his friend? Why does Captain America stay to help Bucky up rather than get off the helicarrier before it crashes? Because a soldier doesn't leave a man behind, and because he knows that if their roles were switched, Bucky would do the same for him. Because
I'm with you to the end of the line.
And then, despite the odds being stacked against him, it is this very sentiment that awakens Bucky. Because at the end of the day, good begets good, because sacrifice means something. And believe it or not, Bucky isn't the only character in the film to learn this lesson. So let's skip ahead a little bit, shall we? If you recall in Endgame, Hawkeye and Black Widow head off to get the Soul Stone, but of course one of them has to die to get it. For me, watching them fight over which of them would get to save the other was the most emotional scene in the film, even more so than Iron Man's death and subsequent funeral. I opened a poll asking Marvel fans which of these two should have died in this scene, and as you can see, the majority of fans think it was fitting for Natasha to die, but as you can also see, a sizable minority think Hawkeye should have been the one to go. If you are one of these people, allow me to explain why I think Black Widow's death in Endgame was perfect. And it all stems back to this movie, The Winter Soldier. So in the first mission, Natasha was the aspect that Nick Fury compartmentalized. Fury defended this by basically saying that unlike Captain America, Black Widow doesn't have a code and is down for basically anything, while Captain America will only do certain things. Naturally, this immediately leads Steve to distrust Natasha, and he even chooses to hide the USB drive in a vending machine rather than give it to her. He treats her as an adversary until she opens up about who the assassin is. This does not magically earn his trust though, as her worldview is still opposed to his. This can be seen soon after by Natasha thinking they stole the truck, while Steve insists he's only borrowing it. In that same scene, Natasha talks about her perception of truth.
I don't know, the truth is a matter of circumstance. It's not all things to all people, all the time. Neither am I.
She then goes as far as to ask Steve what he wants her to be, to which he simply responds,
How about a friend?
She shrugs the response off, but it is clear that this had a profound effect on her. This is one of the only times in her life that someone has genuinely wanted to be her friend. And to further challenge Natasha's worldview, when Hydra fires a missile at them, Steve risks his life to save Natasha, despite not fully trusting her. Finally, she begins to doubt the validity of her actions. Just watch this clip, it speaks for itself.
If it was the other way around, and it was down to me to save your life, and you be honest with me, would you trust me to do it?
I would now.
The genuine concern she expresses in this question about his perception of her is beautiful, and this is the moment her character begins to change into what we see in Endgame. And the joy you can see in her face after Steve's response really shows that she wants that. She wants to be genuine. She wants to be trusted. And it's not like she's trying to get on his good side in order to use him. Getting Steve's trust is not a means to an end for Natasha, but it is rather an end in itself. And you can see this change of heart just a few scenes later, when Bucky starts shooting down at them from the roof of the car, and Natasha immediately defends Steve, moving him out of the way of an incoming bullet. And again near the climax of the film, when Pierce reminds her that leaking the SHIELD files would show the world who she is, yet she continues to do it. At the end of the film, when the Department of Defense claims she should be behind bars, She responds by saying that they need her, and she's right. She's not the heartless assassin she used to be, the one that's in all those files, but she has become a soldier, a trusted ally, a friend. And this is why her death in Endgame makes sense, because it is that final step of her character development, to sacrifice herself in order to save everyone else, to save Steve, just as he said he trusted her to. And it's these messages of what it means to be a good soldier, of what it means to trust, that, at least to me, make this movie stand out. And honestly, these are the reasons why I personally find it to be the best movie in the MCU. So yeah, that'll do it for this video. If you made it to the end, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, be sure to like and subscribe. Have a good day, and I'll see you next Wednesday.